Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Consulting Podcast. This is your host, Mohammed Misbah, aka the Consulting Guy. Today, I have a very interesting guest with me. His name is Fabio Peña. He is not a consultant. He is a financial controller at a manufacturing company. However, he has started a consulting company to help first-generation Americans and individuals to break into the corporate lifestyle. Fabio, very excited to have you. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely, Fabio. See, when you first reached out, right, and you sort of explained your story, I was bought in right away. Typically, the folks that come on the consulting podcast, or at least my channel on the social media, is very focused and dedicated to individuals that are in consulting or want to get into consulting or have been, part of Big Four or some of these other firms that are out there. Yours is a very interesting story because you're not in the consulting career right now, at least from a formal career perspective, yet you are helping individuals break into consulting. So can you tell us about that and how you got started and what is Peña & Company?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So where do I start? So Peña & Company has been taking a lot of turns since I started it. I officially launched it live on social media at the beginning of the year. I would say probably the 1st of January. And when I started, like my Instagram page, for example, I did, classify it as a management consulting firm, wanting to, provide services to small and medium-sized companies. But when I first started it out, a lot of my followers weren't really the audience that I was going to be providing my services for, right? A lot of my friends that I went to high school with or college with, not all of them are in business or consulting. So it was kind of, difficult to provide content to an audience that wasn't really asking for it, right? So I asked myself, what do I have in common with these people? What do I have in common with my audience? And one of the first things that stood out was, me being a first generation student as well, being the first in my family to attend a 4-year university and graduate. So that's kind of where that turn did take, kind of went in a different direction than I had anticipated at first. But
And when you first set out, what was your goal with your, because you're out of college, you went into your manufacturing career, right?
Not quite. So I did graduate from college from my undergrad in 2016.
Okay.
And when I did graduate, I did have a number of roles, the first being working for a health tech startup in the Seattle area.
Okay.
I worked there for a couple of years as an accountant. A couple of years after that, my wife and I decided to move across the state to Eastern Washington, just to be closer to family. And she's currently on her journey to applying to medical school.
Okay.
And so we kind of just, called it like a gap year, you could say, rather than just being so consumed with city life, right? But after that, I ended up working for an oil and petroleum company as an accountant as well.
Okay.
Didn't like, I wouldn't say it was my favorite job, just because it was a completely different industry. So I decided to resign, and I ended up working for a law firm, managing their books as well. But I was laid off at the end of 2019.
Okay.
I was laid off, and that's when I feel like I really hit a turning point with my life. I questioned what I was doing, if I even wanted to pursue, a career in accounting. I almost decided to move into journalism and become a reporter.
Oh, wow.
Going all over the place. Yeah.
Okay.
So, getting laid off kind of sucks, right? You kind of question yourselves, why didn't I make the cut? And it was at the same time in my life where I just decided to go back to grad school, go to business school and go for my MBA. So that's the story of how I ended up going back to school. But I was laid off for 7 months, and then I found the current role where I'm working at right now, which is the manufacturing company. It's based in the Netherlands, and so they're pretty fresh here in the state of Washington. I started as a financial analyst, and I've made my way up to financial controller, right? But I don't know. I just feel like something was still missing. Even though I was, I had the experience to work in finance, I kind of wanted to do something more. I kind of wanted to just give back to my community and, hopefully give somebody some pointers on how I was able to make it so far, despite, being laid off. And a lot of other things I'm sure we'll get into, like me getting rejected from the business school at one point. So
100%. And it sounds like you saw what you went through and the challenges and the lack of, let's say, mentorship, essentially, right? I think a
Correct.
lot of
Yeah.
first generation, me being a first generation, I could tell you firsthand, I felt what you were feeling or had felt,
Hmm.
right? Going through university and trying to find your career or your job and having no real mentor or mentors around that had gone through
Hmm.
that process multiple times that I could just call up or reach out or message, right? It was very
Yeah.
cold calling, reaching out on LinkedIn, which, wasn't really hot back in, whatever, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I get it, right? Because that there is a gap in that community. It's underserved, and you want
Hmm.
to bridge that for others.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was really, aside from not being able to have someone to go to when I was in my undergrad,
Yeah.
um, there was something else that also stood in the way that it did take me quite a few years to realize is that there's like a social economic divide between us, right? So a
Mm,
lot of first generation students, they have richly diverse backgrounds, some of them being born in the US,
yeah.
the education level of their parents varied. So everybody kind of started on a different playing field. And so when I was in undergrad, I would often compare myself, how come I'm not getting that internship
Yeah.
at Microsoft or Amazon like my peers are, I would be like, I thought we were like in the same boat. And a
Yeah.
lot of it had to do with just with the guidance I had, the resources that I was provided, not knowing what resources were even there to begin with, right? Um, so yeah, it was quite a bit of a challenging time going through undergrad.
No, and I'm so glad you're trying to fight your way out for at least others. You may be too long in the process, and gladly have a career that's working out, and you're starting your thing. But students that are listening to this, right? It's something that
Mhm.
it is underserved, and there is a need for. But interesting point on the socioeconomic sort of disconnect or disparity that it does exist.
Mhm.
Um, do you think it's the because at the end of the day, right, when Amazon, Microsoft, one of the fangs, doesn't matter who it is, when they look at a resume, are they comparing apples to apples, or do you think because these other individuals that, let's say, have had, you know, I don't want to say, it's kind of aggressive to say, a silver spoon right throughout their lives, but those that did get those opportunities and the parents were able to fund certain things when they were younger, right? They just have better resumes than individuals that are first generation, even though you may
Yeah.
have the grades and everything.
Honestly, I think for me, I think it just has to go back to the very beginning of being able to transition college along with your peers, right? So, me moving to the big city, it was completely out of this world. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to commute in the city.
Mm,
While some other first generation students grew up around Seattle, right? They already had the resources on like how to get by. They knew how to like navigate the city life while in college.
yeah.
Some other finances may have been a little different than others, but I think for me it was just mainly the transitioning part of it, right? So learning how to study in college was a biggie for me.
Yeah.
I was not the one who got straight A's my freshman year of college. In fact, I did fail a class or two my first year. And so a lot of that was discouraging, it kind of made me question if I was even meant to be in an institution of 40,000 students, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, the students who were able to navigate college easier and transition smoother, they were almost favored. And so they were kind of seen in the spotlight, and they were getting the motivation to keep on going on while everybody else was like, well, what about us? I
Yeah.
was among
Yeah.
those students. So
It
it's
goes back to how there's no element of surprise for folks that are in the system or in the know.
yeah.
Uh, it's funny you're saying these things, and I'm going back to my college years. My parents' first generation. I was born in the United States.
Uh-huh.
However, my parents were not born here, right? They didn't grow up here. They didn't have careers here, so their mindset of how to navigate the world, right, coming from perhaps like a second or third world country into the first world country, was different, right?
Mhm.
And for them, I think the way I would educate my child on how to navigate college or education is very different than how my parents went about doing it for myself, right? For us, it was like,
Mhm.
make sure you get straight A's and that's it, right? When
Yeah.
there's networking, internships, getting connections, like all of that factors in. And it goes back to your comment on learning how to navigate everything from the streets of your
Yeah.
city to how college works, because it's the time to build your network.
Yeah. So I did learn that later on, as I was trying to get involved with the business school, I would join other organizations.
Okay.
There was like the Association of Latino Professionals for America, Alpha. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've heard of that. But that was an organization that was, kind of more geared toward like Latinos trying to make it in business, right? And I'd network with some folks there, and I did meet some, like, I guess you could say mentors, but
Yeah.
our situations were still different. But yeah.
So what did you do undergrad? What was your like degree when you
Yeah.
formally
So my original business intentions were to major in finance.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just thought that sounded cool, to be honest. I always saw myself, I want to be a financial analyst one day, not knowing a whole lot of what they did.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have the grades for it, to be honest. I got like probably like a B average, which, like, when you're trying to apply to business school, like in a large university, it's very
Yeah.
competitive, right? So I need to
Yeah.
do a little bit better. But when I met with an advisor, and she asked me, and she's like, "Do you even know what business is? Do you know what finance is?" And I was like, "Well, no, that's why I was going to take the classes to learn about it,
Yeah.
And she's like, "Okay, well, looking at your grades, you need to have straight A's from now until spring,
Yeah.
so you can even get considered getting accepted." And
Mm.
man, that really
That woke you
discouraged
up.
me. I was like, yeah, I was like, well, how am I supposed to do that? And so I remember going through like my sophomore year, very stressed and overwhelmed with how I was going to even do it. But I knew I was set on it. So when the time came, I applied, and I think I made it to like the third round of an application review, which was
Okay.
highly rare. That's what they told me, but they still decided to not accept me based on the fact of my grades were a little lower, right?
Okay.
And when was that? That was sophomore year of college. So I had a couple. My goal was to graduate within 4 years. So I literally just told myself, well, what can I major in to just be done in 4 years, right?
Because you known that you would go to B school afterwards. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I had that thought playing in my head, and I was like, well,
okay.
maybe I can just go to like I can get like an MBA after or something, right?
Yeah.
But I ended up deciding to move forward with social and cultural communications. I did take a few of the classes already, and some of them were very they're very interesting. They definitely opened my mind up to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite classes were like Black cultural studies, Chicano
Mhm.
studies, learning a lot about that. But I still did have like the foundation of other business courses, because in order to apply to the business school, you need to take like the financial accounting,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the
The
business law, business
prerequisites.
calc, all the prerequisites, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I still had that. So yeah, I still ended up deciding to move forward with communications just to be done within 4 years.
Yeah.
But it was that sophomore year, I wasn't too worried about that because I was able to secure an accounting internship
Mm.
for the summer. So I was telling myself, okay, well, at least I have my foot in the door, right? I think there's
Yes.
still a possibility, which in my opinion, I think that it opens like a number of possibilities to get in, because really business is about networking, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Meeting people, and a lot of doors can open up to other opportunities. So
I'm telling you, it's the first internship is what is the biggest milestone. It should be one of the biggest milestones in the university, right? Yeah, good grades, absolutely maintain them, right? But if you compare a B plus student to an A plus student that has no experience, right? With the B plus student having good experience in internships, right? Any firm would interview that B plus student. I would
yeah.
argue, right? Because that real world experience through internships and co-ops, et cetera, matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I totally agree with that. So I ended up getting that summer internship, and I was doing like a rotation, like within their accounts payable and accounts receivable, doing the basic stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Learning how to process invoices, the elementary school stuff, right? But I did end up working there for like a year and a half, and I was promoted to be a part-time employee. So
Okay.
I was able to like put that in like my resume, like, okay, this guy has experience, right?
Oh, so from your internship like lasted a year and a half. Like you
Yeah.
just kept going. Okay. Okay. Very good.
Right. So sorry, yeah, I forgot to mention that. Although it was a summer internship, they did ask me to work throughout the school year,
Very
just
nice.
because I was able to
Hmm.
do the work that they asked of me. So that was really nice. I was grateful to have that opportunity. But I think that just having that was able to launch my career, regardless of the fact of being rejected from business school, and graduating with a communications degree, because how many accounts majored in communications, right?
You're accounting, right?
Yeah.
So did you after you got done with undergrad, you had this internship under your belt? Did you end up going to business school?
No, I still did
Okay.
not. So after I graduated from college, I was applying through a recruiting agency, Robert Half. I don't
Okay.
know if you've heard of them. I think they also have like a subsidiary called Account Temps, where they look
Okay.
for temporary assignments for people like me, right?
Okay.
And I found one for a SaaS company, a small software company called Socrata.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been acquired now, and it's been a long time since then. But I was working in their accounting department as well, doing similar type of work, but didn't quite possess the experience that they were looking for
Okay.
with a temp. And so I was let go after 2 weeks.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was
A lot
awesome.
of life lessons going through your
Yeah,
career.
I was like, man, I should have just found a way to major in accounting. And
Oh no.
man, it was tough. I got out of work on it was like a Friday, and I was like, I'm gonna get my first check. This is gonna be lit.
Oh
um,
no. Oh my
but
God.
I get a call, and they're like, hey, Fabio, today was your last day. And I was like, wait, what? I just got home from work. But yeah,
Oh
they
man.
called me to tell me that that was my last day, and
So
I
the
was
day
like,
you were supposed to get your first paycheck, not obviously you got a paycheck, but they informed you that it's your last day. Oh
yeah.
man,
And
I'm sorry. If I could go back in history, and I'm sorry for that moment.
yeah, no, it was definitely a tough time, because it was pretty fresh in my mind that the humiliation I feel like I had to go through from not getting
Oh,
accepted into business school and now being let go for my first job. I was like, man, I might just consider moving back home with my family and work at a bank or something. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I didn't let that stop me. I just decided to keep on going forward,
Very good.
because I feel like that's a lesson that my parents instilled in me, is to just stay persistent, and what people say nowadays, keep on keeping on, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I honestly, I was very fortunate to have the support of my girlfriend at the time, who's now my
Okay.
wife, because I was able to live with her while I looked for other jobs. And
Okay.
so she was the one providing for both of us. And I had that in the back of my head. I was like, man, I really need to get a job, because
Hey, listen, like
my girl's paying for everything.
100%. I mean, two takeaways, right? First one is the fact that I think your story is real, right? There's a lot of stories around. I did this, I got an internship, I got another internship, and life was good. I interviewed, I got my career, blah, blah, blah. And that's just history, right? That's the happy
Yeah,
path. I think a majority
exactly.
of the people, right? There's very few happy paths in the world. A majority of the
Mm-hmm,
people face the tough challenges that your story has, right? Where we may not be
mm-hmm,
able to maintain very high GPAs, right? That doesn't mean it's an end of your career and that's it, that's the end of the road, right? We may not be able to get internships every year, right? Or if we do, maybe it's one internship, you can't land another internship, right? Or you may have no internships, right? You may not be able to get into the schools that you
mm-hmm.
want, right? These are all very, very real things that happen to more people than the other side, which is a straight, happy path career, right? That does happen. And unfortunately, those are the people
Yeah.
that have the loudest voices, right? Because on one success, you gain a platform and then
Uh-huh.
everything is like rosy and sweet, right? Whereas the audience sits back and like, shit, my life isn't like that, right? I have
Yeah.
all these challenges. I don't have an internship. I have bad grades. Am I never going to get a job? And that's the
Yeah.
real thing that happens to more people than not.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll tell you one thing, in business, for those that really know their way around, like have the connections and, even have the grades, it's a lot easier for some people to, get the job of their dreams. I had a lot of my classmates ended up working for Microsoft and Amazon. Some of them ended up taking off to Google.
Mm,
Others just went to Silicon Valley to just start their own startups. And I'm like, man, like, what am I doing with my life, right?
yeah.
Um,
And
and
what
that was
sorry to cut you off. What do you think was
oh no,
different?
you're fine.
What do you think they did differently, or what they had in their resume that was missing from yours, minus the grades? Like, ignore that part for a second.
Well, honestly, I think I have no one to blame but myself, honestly, because a lot of it just had to do with me not having everything set in stone. Like, I didn't have my priorities set when I was a little younger, right?
Okay.
In high school, I mean, I had like a 3.8 GPA, but that only means so much when you're moving out to a university, right? If I had buckled down a little bit more in my first few years of college, maybe that would have made a difference, right? I ended up applying to an internship through EY, but I didn't get it exactly for my grades. I'm like, man, that was kind of my fault, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of that was part of the grades, for example, but
Okay.
a lot of it also was just not knowing of certain pipelines that I could have taken through college, right? So if I had participated in one program, it possibly could have opened doors to another possible internship, for example.
Yeah.
There's this pipeline, the pipeline that's through kind of through like Boeing, and they offer like this internship program for freshman students, right? And it was a program that I regret not applying to, because I could have possibly, had a different turnaround in my career throughout college. So yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it's good that you're self-aware, and then you're able to correct it. No, listen, I respect it, because I'm telling you, most, like, my friends, I'm sure your friends, there's more of that reality than the happy path, right? Like, yes, I'm sure people got, great jobs at Amazon and Microsoft and whatever consulting company, whatever bank, right? But a majority of the people, you have thousands of people graduating from thousands of universities. Not everyone is getting the best job right out the gate, right? And it's very important for folks to understand that does not mean that that's the end of the road, right? That's a beginning. That is a challenge for sure. And it's meant to make you better, right? Because when you heard about your rejections, if you will, that made you a little bit more aggressive and more hungry to not be that person anymore.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And just graduating from college, that was the very beginning of my career. I had no idea what was going to happen. So a couple of months after I got let go from that first job, I ended up finding my first full-time position as a staff accountant for a health tech startup.
Okay.
It was doing pretty well. It was getting a lot of awards and recognition for having a best place to work for in Seattle, best company culture. And I figured, well, if they claim to be the best, might as well just apply. Maybe they'll give me a shot, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, because applying to it, I spent like 3 minutes on the application. I just submitted my recent resume and didn't give it too much thought. But to my surprise, I ended up getting an interview.
Okay.
I met with accounting managers, with the HR director. Ended up meeting with the CFO, and then I also had a meeting with the CEO. And so yeah, it was like the interview process was probably a few weeks, but I ended up getting that role, and that was like the start of something new. I learned everything from the ground up, because when you're working for a startup, you kind of wear multiple hats at once, right? You're not just focused on one thing. So I had a lot of hands-on experience with sales and operations, accounting. I was even involved with some of like the data and analytics sort of stuff that was offered. So they had like little, I guess you could say, cross hybrid and training opportunities for those that were interested in like getting their foot in the different areas, right? So yeah, I worked at that job for a couple of years, and we actually ended up raising about $50 million from a local venture capital firm.
Oh, wow.
And since then, business boomed. We went on a shopping spree, a hiring spree. I got my hands on experience with a lot of responsibilities, just owning different aspects of my role, and I ended up getting promoted. And it was a pretty cool experience, because I ended up learning the things that I wasn't able to through my classes in business school, because I got that hands-on experience. So I think that I had that really going for me.
Exactly. I mean, that's better than any class. I don't care if it's Harvard Business School, right? Going through that experience at a startup that actually raised real money, right, and was able to expand and grow, it's priceless. You can't really compare that to anything in a more academic study type setting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that just really got the wheels going for me. I decided to take some classes online, not business school, like MBA classes just yet, but they were just for, what do they call, like the continuing education sort of classes.
Okay.
And that was the financial accounting, economics, and analytics. But yeah, I ended up just trying to get myself back into the school setting, and I ended up applying to a business school, believe it or not. It was at Seattle University, but I didn't hear of my decision letter for like months. It was almost like half a year.
Okay.
And within that time, so much had happened. My wife and I decided to move back to the eastern side of the state.
Okay.
And by the time we moved, they said I had gotten accepted. I was like, well, it's too late now, you know.
Oh, you
I
moved
started a
out.
whole new life over here. Yeah. So
Very interesting. So how did you ultimately end up in this financial controller position that you're in right now? Was that after the startup, you just like left it and then wanted to do something different altogether?
Not that I wanted to just leave it and do something different. I actually wanted to, I wanted to continue growing there, but long term, I didn't see myself living in the city. I myself was getting kind of tired of the hour-long commutes and everything that came with that, the busy life. I was hoping to settle down a little bit more. And plus the cost of living is crazy, especially in Seattle. So when we moved back to Tri-Cities, that's where I currently live right now.
Yeah.
It's a lot more cheaper. You can get a house for less of what you're paying for rent over there in Seattle, and
I could bet.
it just doesn't compare. Yeah.
It's like New York, right? Like back in people when they compare New York to some of these suburbs around New York, the same price you pay for a whole house with the backyard and the front yard and a 2-car garage is what people are paying for their apartments. I don't know if it's the case now with COVID and everyone leaving the city, but
yeah,
it still is.
Yeah. Fast forward, I guess, like up until COVID, I was laid off, as I mentioned before. I was laid off for 7 months, and I do blame COVID for that, because I was hearing back from job opportunities, but it was like right before the first interview, they called me to say that the jobs were canceled, or they were just going to decide to hire later on in the year. Because nobody knew what was going to happen, right? Nobody knew that COVID would get this big pandemic, right? Yeah, but I still look for jobs on Indeed, and I ended up finding that manufacturing company. They were offering a financial analyst position, and that was, as I mentioned before, that was my dream job. I was like, I want to be a financial analyst. I have experience working as an accountant. I had little side projects that have to do with analysis, so maybe I could just like talk that up and say I'm qualified for it, right?
Absolutely.
But to my surprise, my set of skills matched what they were looking for, so they took a shot with me. And everything was just completely new, especially since it's Dutch owned, and so everything, even like the financial reporting, it kind of went off of like the Dutch GAAP standards. And with my expertise with US GAAP, I started taking more on, because I just, I had the experience. I knew like how an income statement and a balance sheet should properly look like, right? And so, working and cleaning like a lot of the books, I just ended up getting bumped up to financial controller.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So for those that are, obviously a lot of consultants are going to hear this. So what is a financial analyst, or now a financial controller? What does that mean? Like, what do you control? What's the job? What's your day to day?
So honestly, I would say a lot of it's just making sure that the accounting books are, well balanced, and it can go down to like a simple process, such as like a credit card policy, managing expenses, building everything from the bottom up, because in some companies, not everything's organized, not everything has its structure. And so a lot of it was just cleaning that up and making sure that our system was up to date. Working in I think we used Microsoft Navision. I don't know if you've heard of it. But it was like the worldwide version, and so everything was in Dutch. And I was like, what is this? Where are my sales accounts? Where are my expense accounts? Where any kind of account, right? So everything, I literally had to, just start from the bottom, and I had to use Google Translate, and it was nice. It was fun. It was fun. But luckily, I just had everything fresh in my head still, and
that's good. And I'm trying to liken it to consulting, because technically that is a consulting gig, right? Where you get thrown to a client on a client engagement, new problem. Sometimes, you have a different language issue, but it could be a different process, different technology, different strategy that you have to figure out in a very short amount of time. And then not only figure out, but you have to make it better, right? And own the process and enhance the process with your team. So you're pretty much consulting, right? Obviously, you're a financial controller, and you're balancing books, making sure the accounting is right at your firm, but in a very consultative way, I would argue.
Yeah, I did have a lot of conversations one-on-ones, like with the with some of the finance managers over in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And there is that communication barrier, especially when English isn't your first language, and when speaking Dutch isn't your first language, right? And then the whole the timing difference. So over there it's like 9 hours ahead. And so just being able to coordinate everything, starting off, not knowing who to even reach out to.
Yeah.
It reminded me of working in a startup, because it basically is that. But yeah,
you got to figure it out.
Yeah, so a lot of it came with working in different areas, putting on different hats. I work in some of like the marketing, yeah,
very good.
It was something else, but yeah, that was just recent. Now we're here, and I've started this new I guess you could say venture, you could say. And,
and I wanted to get into that. So it's a good transition. But so understanding a lot better now your background, and thank you, because personally, I think it's a great true story of how 95 to 98% of the population of the world probably goes about their career, which is you try one thing, you fail, you try another thing, you fail, you try a third thing, you fail again. As long as you keep getting back up, eventually, like, you had a dream of being a financial analyst like year one of your college because it sounded cool, right? It doesn't matter what you went through, you ultimately made it, right? It may or may not be your final state, but you ended up getting what you wanted in that regard, right? And let me tell you, you had your fair shares of what people would call as failures. But I would argue failures are what make you better. If you've never failed, if you don't know what losing feels like, or getting fired, or getting rolled off an engagement feels like, you're never gonna be that strong, right? You can't be that, you're not that callous, you're not that sort of, that muscle memory isn't there. So when you do face challenges, you're gonna crumble potentially. Whereas you picked it up and you went through it. Not only did you go through it, you got the job that you wanted, but now you're sort of molding it into this company called Peña Co. And now your goal is to pass that forward.
Sorry, I cut off at the last thing. Can you repeat that last part?
Sorry, yeah, I forget where I cut off, but I was mentioning that you went through your sort of whole path, and now you're starting Peña Co, or you had started Peña Co, to now mold that into something where you can pass your experience forward, so others don't have to literally fail like you did, and then they have a guide of some sort.
Yeah. So when I started it, I kind of saw myself as my own ideal client. Somebody who's had their fair shares of failure. Not necessarily getting into their major at first, or struggling to find work experience, because it's very hard, right? Especially in a very competitive market, when your peers are doing better, like academic wise. It's easy for somebody to just kind of like push you aside and be like, okay, well, we want this one because he's doing a lot more better in school, right? So that was kind of like the whole thing behind it. I just wanted to hopefully be able to provide my own personal professional experiences to somebody else who might be going through the same thing.
Okay. So how does this work? Like, how are you finding your clients or students or professionals, and what services are you providing?
Okay, yeah. So I guess a lot of people that I already have on my social network, like on Instagram and Facebook, a lot of the people I have are already are first generation students, right? A lot of them I went to college, but their hometowns were kind of nearby my hometown in Washington State, and so I kind of had that connection with everybody. A lot of the people I also have are from Greek life, so I'm in a fraternity as well. And Sigma Lambda Beta, and it's nationwide, and we do have like members all across the states. So I've been networking with a few, like in different parts, just to get the word out.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is focused on mentorships, and a lot of it is just talking about the journey as a first generation student, through stories that are just unfiltered, inclusive, and transparent. My goal is to just tell it like it is and not sugarcoat everything, because as I mentioned before, I didn't have the straight A's. I faced a lot of obstacles, and I just want to be transparent because, to this day, I've been able to become the financial controller of an international company. And I mainly want to just prove that, I think anything is possible.
So you're reaching out and folks are sort of getting connected with you through social media or through your Greek Life Connects and your network. And are they predominantly students that are engaged with you that are trying to break it into a career?
Yes, that is correct. Most of them are students. The majority of them are in their undergrad. Just a few that are barely transitioning to their undergrad, and
Okay.
quite a few are already graduated. But for the most part, yeah, it's around there. So yeah, I guess part of my services is like, aside from just mentorships, like through stories, everything's still new, but my goal in the future is to be able to offer a platform where people who are in certain areas or certain careers could provide mentorships to students who want to pursue the same path, right?
Okay.
It's something that I wish I had in college. I didn't, I knew I wanted to be in finance, but I didn't know anybody to talk to or to ask how I can, make that happen. So
Yeah.
it's just being able to be give a helping hand to those who need it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then of course, like the career development and professional development type of stuff. So offering like a workshop on, how to tailor your resume, how to network, how to do well in a job interview, that sort of stuff.
Okay. So very, very, and this is all pro bono.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. So it truly is a platform for mentorship, for refining folks so they can land the right careers and getting them ready, right? Because there's a whole method of getting yourself ready outside of the education and the grades that you're going to get that's necessary to land your career.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, very cool. And I guess one interesting question that I have for you is, now that you're speaking with a lot of first generation Americans that want to have careers that perhaps don't have a linear path, what do you think? I'm going to say we, because I too am a first generation. What do you think we lack, right? That needs to be refined the most so it evens out the playing field, right? Is it just what I would think about is like the push for grades? Is it the desire for a career? Is it because we're distracted too much? Like, what have you seen come out the most?
So I think from what I've seen, from my personal experience, and even just research I've done on my own,
Yeah.
a lot of it has to go back to the fact that not everyone starts on the same playing field transitioning to college, right?
Okay.
So we do have different backgrounds that put us at different starting points, but for those of us that are seeking help and guidance on how to navigate college and get into our careers, we're all sort of grouped into one bucket, which is just the first generation experience. Other people like staff or faculty, they'll classify that us into that, and they'll just provide the same sort of help that they would give to any other student. And so the main problem there is that a lot of the help isn't individualized. And that's what's lacking in our situation. I think I see that as a gap in like diversity and inclusion efforts, because a lot of that is just not being taken into account for.
So people feel isolated. They feel like they're not part of the, let's call it the club. And
Yeah.
it's sort of the same regurgitated materials that may not even apply to them in their situation.
Yeah, I did. I did make a few posts of that, like in my Instagram account, talking about that. Not just about my experiences, but also about my wife's, since she's a first generation student too. And she was going on to tell me that if there was one thing she would have told herself more in her undergrad, is to tell herself that, that she belongs, that we all belong, because it can be very easy to get discouraged and feel like we're part of something, especially when you're in a university of like 40,000 students from people all over the world. So yeah.
And how obviously your initiative is one way of doing that, right? Because now you're a professional, you have a network of professionals that I'm assuming are helping you with this, that you connect folks with in your workshops. What are some of the other ways that you encourage folks to feel like they belong, and the fact that being first generation is not a handicap, right? You may be starting a few steps back, but there are other ways to accelerate you.
Yeah. So a lot of it too is, not just focusing it on the experiences that I went through, but I'm using my page as also like as a community for other people to voice their experiences.
Okay.
So kind of what I did was I started a storytelling series called First Gen Cuentos. Cuentos meaning stories in Spanish.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Very
a lot of
nice.
it has to talk about, the experiences we went through either as like an undergrad or any point in our lives,
Yeah.
where we felt like an experience just impacted us so much, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in any type of way. And so far we've had about 3 stories being shared online,
Very
and
nice. Yeah,
they're
I'm on your
just
page right now looking at your
yeah,
content.
yeah, they're such authentic stories, very personal, and this is the stuff that you just don't see when you're in school, right? Everybody's like basically putting their best foot forward. Everybody's just trying to make it. Everybody's just in survival mode where we're
Yeah.
just trying to make it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel I want my page to be somewhere where someone can just come to and breathe and just finally feel like they can be themselves, because I feel like that's lacking, like in a university setting.
No, what 100%. I it gets ignored a lot as like a tertiary, not even a secondary challenge or issue, right? Where
Hmm.
we forget the fact that humans, historically through evolution, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe, doesn't really matter. We operate in packs, right? Feeling like you belong in a society, right, is an innate thing that's programmed in our minds. And the second that is threatened, right, through exile back in the day, or the fact that you're in a university of 40,000 students and they're in the club and you're not, right? You go in panic mode. And that panic mode is
Yeah,
going to affect everything from your grades, your confidence, right? The
yeah,
fact that even you could be the smartest person, the greatest, whatever, but you're going to be on shaky grounds because you don't believe in yourself, right? And having
yeah.
a platform, I think, to erase some of that doubt is tremendous. I think it's great.
Yeah, and aside from everything that just happens in school, there's something else that I also want to bring up is that
Yeah.
a lot of what first generation students go through is kind of like the transition of like the norms from one generation to the next, right? So a lot of first generation students, might come from uh, different countries. Their parents moved to the US when they were young, or maybe they were born in a different country.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it's very new, especially to our parents. They don't know how to um, maybe support us, because obviously they don't know how to access like you know college applications,
Yeah.
financial
100%.
aid, all that
Hmm.
sort of stuff. And it can be very confusing when their main job, like growing up, was to just be able to provide for their family, right, to get a good steady job and secure,
Yeah.
have security, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'm still learning about that. But a lot of what comes with that is that when we moved, like, say, to like the big city to pursue college, there's this sense of guilt because, we're taking a big step in a path that's unknown, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people call first generation students trailblazers because they're paving a path where there is none. And so
Uh,
it's very new.
No, no, that's a great point that you built, that you mentioned, especially on the parents, right? Because they, first generation students, parents, especially if they migrated from other countries, they're going to teach, depending on what's best of how they were brought up, which
Hmm.
in most cases is not applicable in this society, right? And I
Yeah,
and I'm speaking from experience, and I think my parents did a tremendous job. They did the best they can, right? But
hmm,
there's other things where you do have to blaze your own trail, right? And figure things out
yeah,
because those are paths uncharted. Your parents just don't know, right? And I fully
yeah,
agree. I still remember just college application process. My parents didn't know. They're like, oh yeah,
yeah,
you're going to college, how to go to college, how to apply, what universities are good, bad, SATs. There was no concept of that, right?
right.
And I was lucky where I had good guidance counselors, just reaching out to different people and figured it out, right?
Hmm.
And that sort of worked out. But I fully agree. There some people don't even have that sort of foundation, not because the parents aren't supportive, they just don't
Hmm.
know. So
Yeah, they just don't know. Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah, and that's the thing that was kind of like something that I did have to, find my way through, especially when I wanted to take off to, the University of Washington in Seattle.
Yeah.
I did have my older brother and a cousin of mine did end up going to like a 4-year university, but it
Hmm.
was on the other side of the state, and I was almost like kind of encouraged to just go along with them because then I could just like be roommates with them
Be
and
together.
kind of go,
And
yeah,
yeah,
be together and
the safe
mainly
way.
just, yeah, find a safe way, be on a familiar path.
Yeah.
And so when I wanted to do the opposite, there was no, everything was just so new. I didn't even know where to go, and I felt like that was even a more challenging part. So
No, it's so true,
uh,
and I'm so glad we're speaking because it's resonating with me. So I know it's resonating with others, right? And I
mhm.
am, thankfully I have a very successful career, and I accredit that to my parents and the education, and quite frankly, a lot of it is luck, right? Being at the right place at the right time, the right opportunity. Sometimes the stars align and you're there, right? But I fully can empathize with you and the challenges that you faced because I faced them too, and I'm telling you, the lack of understanding of how to navigate college, how to navigate careers, the safe path. Take that because it's safe and you'll get something. At least you have a job, right? As opposed to
Yeah,
reaching for the stars and getting the best job, right?
yeah,
That may have a low probability, but if you get it, can change generations, right? All of
hmm,
those things are there because our parents come from a safety mindset, right? Like
hmm,
it's not about self-actualization. It's more about how do we stay safe? How do we make sure there's still a home, there's shelter, and we can still provide for the families? And that is good enough sometimes, right?
yeah,
But I can tell you, I think once your parents, once you take the lead as a first generation, your parents or hopefully your parents start seeing the potential, and that
hmm,
paradigm does shift. At least it did for my parents, right? Where
right, yeah,
they recognize that holy shit, there's so much out there that we did not know that our son or our daughter, whomever now knows. Let's encourage them more and let's give them some whatever resources we can provide to get there.
yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree. And now that man, I started undergrad in 2012, so it's almost been a decade. And I just realized that I have a lot of younger relatives that are, going down the same path now. They're going to
Yeah.
college and they're the first in their families to pursue. And I'm hoping that, any of my experiences can help them out too. So it's kind of like why I ended up going in that direction with the page. So
No, it's
yeah,
very
it's
good. And I would have, another sort of twist I'll throw in there is maybe there's workshop with parents you can hold, right? Because a lot
yeah.
of, especially the younger students, if they're still in
Mhm.
high school and if you catch them at the right time, their minds will be ready by the time they get to a university or college, whatever they pursue, right? Because I do
Yeah.
think there's a lot more influence of parents when you're in elementary school and high school,
Mhm.
as opposed to when you get to university. It's kind of too late at that point sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree, and I think that's a great idea. It's something that I just might consider and give you a little bit of credit. Like,
No.
hey, I was consulted by the consulting guy, and so
No,
yeah,
listen, I
it's good
love
though.
this because this is I think it is needed in all the non sort of majority communities. I'm sure
Mhm.
everyone can relate, right? I'm Pakistani. I'm telling you, my Pakistani relatives and friends and families, they're sort of first generation folks. They can relate, right? Same goes for Hispanics. Same goes for Asians, like you name it, right? Everyone will be able to resonate with these
Mhm.
stories because it's a true challenge that everyone faces. And there's a linear order of operations to get to some of the places folks are already there by the time we make it or we understand.
Yeah,
And it can
totally.
be bridged very easily.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I included the inclusiveness aspect to my page.
Yeah.
It's because a lot of the pages that I did research, I wanted to see if if there was already a space before I started my page, right? I wanted to see if there was already somewhere where I could go to see if that was already available. And a lot of them were kind of more geared specific groups of people, right? And so that being said, some of them being like more geared towards high school students or like a specific race or
Yeah.
and so I just wanted to make it one big space for everyone. Everybody's welcome, different backgrounds, doesn't matter your race or how you identify yourself.
Yeah.
If you're a first generation student, then you belong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
100%. 100%. Now tell me about these TikToks or these reels. What's you're experimenting, I'm seeing. So what's resonating? What mixture is working? Because I know we're dealing with a different generation every so many years.
Yeah, so I guess TikToks are their thing now, right? For a lot of folks, TikTok's very popular, and I'm just trying to stay with the trend. So not everybody wants to see like a long post of having to read so much text. I kind of want to make my page a very visually friendly.
Yeah.
And a lot of what gets people's attention is a reel. So whether it's an informative one, if it's just a silly one, dancing around, what's wrong with some humor nowadays, right? You don't want to just provide boring content.
I love this last one where it's like rejected from major, average GPA, and all this and that, and you're dancing through like still financial.
Yeah, it's just I had a little fun with that one. That was fun. You're just like
for the camera. I gotta show. Hold on, let me zoom in. This is good. This is good stuff. So how do you think of it? Like, are you sitting down and just like thinking of ideas, like what the next reel should be and what's going to resonate?
Yeah, well, a lot of it's just like, obviously social media, there's a lot of entertainment on there, right? And I try to incorporate my dancing because I'm actually a dancer.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I try to, I guess what the media calls it, break dance. But I'm a fan of hip hop dancing. And so if I can, I'll incorporate some dancing because it's, in my opinion, it's pretty cool. But
I see it.
I understand not everybody likes that, but I just thought it was something fun to incorporate. But yeah, I'm still getting pretty creative with the reels, and we'll see where that goes. But
it's good, man. I'm telling you, it is what gets the most hits, even with the algorithm nowadays, right? There's a lot more with a lot more people, and you have to capitalize on that, right? You have to go with the trends, to your point, and use the medium that is going to get the most eyes for the demographics that you're targeting. And I think TikToks and reels are what students, I would imagine, right, are all over nowadays. If I'm doing it, right, and I'm an old fart, then I'm sure others are doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good way to, to reach to new accounts on Instagram, especially when like a reel is like trending, it'll show up like on an Explorer page. And when somebody like looks at that, they'll be like, oh, who posted this? They'll find themselves in my page, also take advantage of like the hashtags. We don't need to get into the SEO specifics, right? But I figured a lot of the first generation community is like on Instagram, right? And so I'm kind of focusing a lot of my efforts on that right now. I do have like a business page set up within Facebook and LinkedIn, but it's a little bit different audiences, right? Especially LinkedIn, where things are a little bit more professional. So I don't post my reels on LinkedIn.
Although LinkedIn has stories now, which is crazy to me. How LinkedIn has stories. Yeah. How do you like? Are you gonna dance? Like, what are you gonna post that's career oriented in a story? I still got to figure that one out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't use the stories feature on LinkedIn too much. I don't know what I would post.
That's my point, because you don't know.
I mean, maybe it'd be me getting my morning coffee at the office. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's what it was intended for, to build more of a personal with the professional. But it's just, it feels like, they just wanted to have that feature because everyone else has that feature, right? Like Snapchat has it, Instagram has it, TikTok has it, everyone has, Facebook has it. Why not LinkedIn? So the throw stories wherever you want. And I think there was a meme going around where they had stories in like Microsoft Excel. Right? It was fake, but it's like, it's probably going to happen at some point, right? Collaboration in real time, stories.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, especially anything like office related, like any memes related to like the office are hilarious, especially like the what is it, the Big Four accountant Instagram page. I follow their account on Instagram, and man, they post hilarious stuff on there.
Yeah, no, that whoever's running that page is doing an excellent job. We use this every now and then, but they they had tremendous growth in a very small amount of time. I did ask them to come on the podcast, but I think they're trying to be a little bit more discreet. Maybe in the future.
Well, you were able to get the consulting humor
Mo
podcast, right?
Mo Yang, we're good friends now, and he has a great story as well, and grew his praise to 300,000 very, very quickly. But I it kind of liken it to your story, because you are also building a brand, right? I think the fact that you are using social media that is more utilized with the younger population, right? It's easier to reach out to you versus a guy in a suit. right? That's just like, making YouTube videos or has dry sort of content out there, right? I think if folks would find it very comfortable to just message you, right? Like, hey, Fabio, like I got a question.
Yeah, and that's exactly like my goal is just to, make it like an easy thing to access, because, as I mentioned before, a lot of students are already in survival mode. Yeah, there are a lot of resources for first-gen students. I'll find a website that, gives you information on scholarships, but then you find yourself reading these long lines of text, and it's boring, man. Like, I've had a long day trying to figure everything out. I'm burnt out. I just want to, find something where it's just, it's easy,
It's easy. Yeah, it's easy, digestible, it's quick, and there's a real person behind it that has gone through it, what I'm going through.
Yeah.
So Fabio, what's the best place for folks to reach you? How can someone get in touch with you? Is it your website? Is it your Instagram? How can folks reach out that are going through some of the challenges that you mentioned?
Right now, I would say it'd be my Instagram account. Anybody could send me a direct message, and I reply to everybody. I don't like leaving people unread. I'm a firm believer that if you want to build a community, you got to engage with your community, right? You can't. So that's another easy way. My website's not officially launched just yet. I'm just doing like the finishing touches. A lot of it being like, finalizing my privacy notice and all the boring stuff behind it, right? But
I can imagine.
Once that's set up, I can I'll have an easy contact form for people to reach out, possibly like a direct message feature through there as well. But any social media account works fine.
And what's your Instagram handle for folks? Pena.consulting?
Yeah, so at pena.consulting.
Excellent. So folks, definitely reach out, especially first generation. You need some pointers, or just someone to chat with who's gone through what you're probably going through. And as I mentioned, let's be real, when we mention this, a lot of professionals come on and talk about how, one success led to another and it was a snowball effect. That's not real life, right? More failure is part of life. And the most successful people are the ones that went through the failure, but they were resilient, and they persevered, they kept going, right? And I think your story is something that is that. And I think, you're going to continue to see a lot more success, right? Your mind is at the right place.
Yeah, I just started the page a little over a month ago, and everything's very fresh and new. But I'm looking forward to how things go within the year, and we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely, all the best of luck. I think you're doing a
Thank
service.
You. Yeah.
This is not a regular social media sort of pitch. I think it's a service that is needed, and I hope you're able to scale it, right, and really expand this and provide value, because I really think it's needed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely not your average management consulting firm. It's definitely not just the average community page, kind of like a twist behind both. So I like to call it a community-led business model.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, excellent, Fabio. Thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting. I'm glad that we share a lot of experiences together. And I would love to have you on maybe down the road once you've expanded and you have your sort of website up and running, and more reels and more TikToks out.
Yeah, I look forward to that. So I'd love to connect again. But thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Fabio. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.